You've been taught to look for attraction, but you were never taught how to carry it. There is a difference. Somewhere, right now, a man is receiving signals from a woman. Subtle shifts in posture, changes in tone, pauses that linger a fraction too long. He feels something is there, but he doesn't trust himself enough to interpret it. So he hesitates, he overthinks, he leaks nervous energy. And the moment dies. Not because she wasn't interested, but because he wasn't centered. Here is the truth most men never hear. Attraction is not rare. Stability is. A woman can feel a spark with many men. She can notice your presence, your voice, your physicality. Biology handles that part easily. Hormones spike, dopamine flickers, her nervous system registers you. But what her biology is truly scanning for is control. Not dominance, not aggression. Control. Centuries before language, before dating advice, before social media confusion, the human body evolved to detect one thing above all in a potential partner: emotional regulation under uncertainty. That is the trait that survives. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience could measure it. Epictetus taught that you must distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. Attraction, not in your control. Her response, not in your control. Your composure, entirely yours. Most men reverse that equation. They obsess over signals. They analyze her behavior. They search for certainty before they move. They want proof. But proof is a luxury weak men demand because they cannot tolerate risk. Strength is moving without needing guarantees. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. When you notice a woman tilting toward you, holding eye contact, angling her body in your direction, does your breathing remain slow? Does your voice remain steady? Or does your nervous system spike and betray you? Because the moment she senses that spike, micro tension in your jaw, subtle acceleration in your speech, her body recalculates. Safety or instability, curiosity or chaos. Modern psychology calls this affect regulation. Evolutionary biology calls it mate selection pressure. The Stoics called it virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately in his Meditations that external events are neutral. It is your judgment about them that disturbs you. Now apply that to attraction. A woman's signal is neutral. Your interpretation of it determines whether you remain composed or unravel. And unraveling is loud, even when you say nothing. There is something deeply paradoxical here. The more a man tries to capitalize on attraction, the faster it evaporates, because urgency communicates scarcity of self, scarcity of options, scarcity of emotional abundance, scarcity of inner stillness. You were never meant to chase signals. You were meant to be the environment in which signals intensify. Consider what happens neurologically when a woman feels drawn to you. Her dopamine rises in response to uncertainty. Her brain begins to predict possible outcomes. Will he notice? Will he step forward? Will he hesitate? Uncertainty amplifies attraction. But here is what destroys it: predictable neediness. If your energy says, "I hope she likes me," the polarity collapses. If your energy says, "I am assessing whether she aligns with my standards," the polarity strengthens. Notice the inversion. You stop trying to win, you begin evaluating. That subtle psychological shift alone separates boys from men. Seneca warned that he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary. Most men suffer before rejection even exists. They feel tension before there is a threat. They rush to relieve that tension by seeking reassurance, extra compliments, excessive humor, premature escalation. They attempt to secure the outcome instead of stabilizing themselves. And women feel that immediately. Because while you're thinking about what to say next, her nervous system is reading your regulation. Calm is seductive because calm signals capacity. Capacity to lead, capacity to withstand stress, capacity to protect without panic. This is not about manipulation. It is about hierarchy of nervous systems. When two people interact, the more regulated system sets the tone. If hers is oscillating with curiosity and yours is anchored, she will unconsciously synchronize downward into calm fascination. If yours spikes upward into anxiety, she will withdraw into guarded neutrality. You must understand something crucial. Attraction is rarely lost in dramatic fashion. It erodes microscopically. One rushed sentence, one laugh that is slightly too loud, one forward lean that communicates urgency instead of presence, and erosion compounds. This is why masculine self-mastery is not optional, it is foundational. Even Friedrich Nietzsche, who stood far from Stoic restraint in many respects, understood the power of restraint when he wrote about will. Not loud will, not impulsive will, disciplined will. The ability to delay reaction, the ability to hold eye contact half a second longer than comfort demands, the ability to allow silence to stretch without filling it. Silence is one of the rarest currencies in modern dating. Most men speak to reduce their own discomfort. Very few can hold space and let her nervous system lean forward. Let me ask you something direct. When a woman is showing interest, can you tolerate the charge in the air without discharging it prematurely? Because tension is not the enemy. Tension is the instrument. The world has trained you to eliminate tension quickly, reply fast, escalate fast, decide fast. But attraction thrives in calibrated delay. Not hesitation born of fear, delay born of control. There is a difference. A fearful delay feels like confusion. A controlled delay feels like depth. Women don't consciously articulate this, they experience it. They feel when a man is measuring his response rather than reacting. They feel when he's choosing his pace rather than being dragged by chemistry. And that choice, the visible command over impulse, is what elevates you above ordinary men. Most men operate at the mercy of stimulus. She smiles, they lean in. She touches her hair, they compliment immediately. She moves closer, they overcommit. You will not. You will register. You will breathe. You will remain steady. Because the frame you hold internally determines the gravity she feels externally. And gravity is irresistible. Not because it pulls aggressively, but because it does not move when pushed. If attraction begins at the level of biology, it deepens at the level of psychology, and psychology bows to presence. So before you obsess over signals, ask yourself whether your internal state is worthy of receiving them. Can you remain composed in the face of desire? Can you maintain self-respect while feeling chemistry? Can you walk away, genuinely, if the alignment is not there? This is the foundation. Without it, every signal becomes noise. With it, even the smallest gesture becomes amplified. And once you master this internal stillness, something fascinating begins to happen. You stop wondering whether she is interested. You begin noticing how intensely she is calibrating herself around you. Her tone adjusts, her posture aligns, her pacing shifts. But you do not chase. You observe. You allow. You choose when to move. Because the man who governs himself governs the interaction. And this is only the surface layer of what most men misunderstand about attraction. There's a deeper pattern operating beneath body language and beneath words, a psychological current that determines whether she merely feels drawn or whether she feels compelled. And that current begins where most men lose discipline, in the subtle moments right after attraction becomes visible. Attraction becomes dangerous for most men at the exact moment it becomes visible. Before that, they are calm, detached, even indifferent. But the second they sense confirmation, the prolonged eye contact, the softened tone, the slight shift closer, something inside them tightens. Desire spikes. Their imagination accelerates ahead of reality. And that is where they lose power. Because when desire outruns discipline, your nervous system starts negotiating for outcomes. You begin thinking about the kiss before she is thinking about the kiss. You begin thinking about the future before she has processed the present. You begin subtly trying to secure what has not yet been offered. She feels that. Not intellectually, somatically. Her body asks a simple question. Is he reacting or is he choosing? There is a principle in Stoic thought that separates the composed from the impulsive. Epictetus insisted that external impressions are not the problem, our automatic assent to them is. You do not control the spark of desire, but you can control whether you immediately submit to it. Most men submit. A slight brush of her arm and they escalate too fast. A warm smile and they overinvest emotionally. A moment of vulnerability and they rush intimacy. They do not realize that premature escalation collapses polarity. Here is what modern neuroscience quietly confirms. Dopamine intensifies in states of anticipation, not possession. The brain is far more stimulated by what might happen than by what is guaranteed. Uncertainty is intoxicating, but uncertainty must feel grounded, not chaotic. If you rush to define the connection, you convert anticipation into conclusion, and conclusion ends the psychological chase that attraction feeds on. The ancient world understood this without brain scans. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to act from principle, not from appetite. Appetite seeks immediate gratification. Principle chooses timing. Timing is power. There is a silent test that occurs when a woman feels attracted to a man. She will increase proximity, physically or emotionally, and then she will observe. Not consciously, not maliciously, instinctively. Will he overstep? Will he flinch? Will he rush? Will he retreat? Or will he remain exactly as centered as before? This is where masculine archetype positioning emerges. There are many archetypes men perform: the entertainer, the pursuer, the protector, the intellectual. But beneath performance lies something more primal: the grounded axis, the man who is not moved off-center by stimulus. Evolutionary psychology is not romantic, it is brutally practical. Across history, women who aligned with emotionally volatile men paid a survival cost. Instability meant unpredictable protection, unpredictable resources, unpredictable safety. So the female nervous system evolved sensitivity to micro-instability, a slight change in breathing pattern, a shift from measured speech to excited rambling, an increase in physical intensity that feels driven rather than chosen. These are subtle tells, and the body reads them faster than the conscious mind can articulate them. Here is the paradox you must understand. Sexual tension increases when you demonstrate that you are not controlled by sexual tension. Let that settle. When she senses that you feel the charge but are not enslaved by it, something inside her relaxes and leans forward. Because now attraction feels safe, and safety is the soil where desire deepens. There is also an element of ego positioning at play. Most men subconsciously frame attraction as validation. She wants me becomes a boost to their identity. Their posture changes, their tone changes, they inflate subtly. But true masculine gravity is indifferent to validation. You are not elevated because she is attracted. You are elevated because you are integrated. This shift is enormous. When you stop seeking affirmation, you begin projecting quiet authority. And authority, when calm and contained, triggers fascination. Consider how suspense operates in storytelling. A film does not reveal its climax in the first act. It builds tension slowly, layering stakes, deepening investment. The viewer remains engaged because resolution is withheld. Attraction follows similar architecture. If you reveal your full interest too early, you collapse narrative momentum. If you pretend indifference, you fracture authenticity. The balance lies in calibrated transparency. You allow her to feel that you see the connection without confirming its direction too soon. A slight pause before responding to her compliment. A measured smile when she teases you. A shift in eye contact that acknowledges chemistry without chasing it. These micro-delays amplify emotional intensity. Why? Because her brain begins filling the gaps. Curiosity loops form. Is he fully interested? Is he evaluating me? Is he that composed naturally? The unknown activates imagination, and imagination magnifies attraction far beyond physical reality. Seneca warned that he who is ruled by pleasure loses command over himself. In modern terms, a man who becomes visibly overwhelmed by attraction loses perceived dominance within the psychological exchange.
This is not about suppressing desire. It is about metabolizing it. Feel it, register it, control it. Do not leak it. There is another deeper layer most men ignore: mirroring. When a woman becomes attracted, her body subtly mirrors the energy she perceives. If you are grounded, her movements slow. If you are rushed, she becomes guarded. Your emotional baseline becomes the blueprint she synchronizes with. So ask yourself honestly, is your baseline calm? Or is it restless, searching, slightly hungry for validation? Because attraction magnifies whatever is already there. If you carry unresolved insecurity, attraction will amplify it. If you carry disciplined self-trust, attraction will orbit it. And then there is silence. Silence is often the most misunderstood weapon of all. The average man fears silence because he assumes it signals loss of interest. So he fills it with jokes, stories, questions stacked too quickly. But controlled silence does something extraordinary. It creates space for her to step forward. When you allow a pause after she speaks and simply hold eye contact without urgency, her nervous system stretches into that space. If she is interested, she will bridge the gap. She will continue talking. She will ask another question. She will adjust her posture closer. If she is not, the silence will clarify that as well, without you having invested unnecessary effort. This is strategic patience rooted in self-respect. It is also rare. Most men cannot tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. But uncertainty is not something to eliminate. It is something to navigate with composure. There is a difference between being passive and being deliberate. Passive men wait because they are afraid. Deliberate men pause because they are choosing the optimal moment. One feels hesitant, the other feels powerful. When she senses deliberation, the interaction shifts. You are no longer reacting to her signals. You are directing the tempo. And tempo control is dominance without aggression. This is where many connections either mature into intensity or dissolve into mediocrity. Because once attraction has been confirmed, the next phase is tension sustainability. Can you maintain the charge across multiple exchanges? Can you leave a conversation slightly before energy dips? Can you end a message thread while curiosity is still peaking? This is reward withholding, not as manipulation, but as pacing discipline. You do not give unlimited access immediately. Access is earned through continued alignment. And when a woman senses that you are not over-available, not desperate to lock in certainty, her perception of your value increases. Scarcity, when authentic, signals optionality. Optionality signals choice. Choice signals high status. But this only works if it's genuine. If you pretend scarcity while obsessing privately, your energy will betray you. Inner abundance must precede outer restraint. By now, you should begin to feel something shift. Attraction is no longer about decoding her body alone. It's about mastering yours. Your breathing, your pacing, your emotional regulation, your strategic silence. Most men want techniques. Very few are willing to refine temperament. And temperament is what sustains desire long after the first spark fades. But there is still a deeper layer beneath even this. Because composure and pacing are powerful, yet there is one final dimension that determines whether she merely enjoys your presence or feels psychologically pulled towards it. That dimension is identity. And once you understand how identity framing alters attraction at its core, you will never approach interactions the same way again.
Attraction begins in the body. It intensifies in the mind, but it seals itself in identity. This is the layer most men never reach. They focus on chemistry, on signals, on timing, on when to lean in, when to pull back. All of that matters, but beneath the choreography of interaction lies a more powerful mechanism: who she believes you are. Not what you say you are, not what you perform, what she concludes you are. Identity framing is silent. It is constructed through patterns, consistency of behavior, emotional stability, standards that do not fluctuate under pressure. When a woman feels attraction towards you, her mind begins running simulations, not consciously, instinctively. What would it feel like to be with him? How stable is he under stress? Does he bend easily? Does he lead himself? You are being evaluated on psychological architecture. And here is where most men sabotage themselves. The moment attraction is confirmed, they shift identity. They become overly agreeable, overly accommodating, overly available. They trade solidity for approval. And something subtle breaks. Because attraction requires polarity, and polarity requires structure. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote that the individual must become who he is. Most men never do. They morph into who they think will be accepted, but attraction does not deepen toward a shapeless presence. It deepens toward definition. You must become psychologically defined. That means you have preferences, and you express them calmly. You have boundaries, and you enforce them without anger. You have direction, and you do not abandon it for temporary pleasure. When she tests you, and she will, it is rarely aggressive, it is subtle. A playful challenge, a mild disagreement, a change of plans. She is not trying to dominate you, she is measuring your stability. If you collapse your stance to avoid friction, attraction erodes. If you react defensively, attraction cools. If you remain calm, lightly amused, unshaken, attraction intensifies. This is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes embodiment. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant pressure, yet in his private writings he reminded himself daily that emotional self-command was the highest victory. Imagine carrying that level of discipline into a simple interaction with a woman. Suddenly, flirting feels effortless, because nothing destabilizes you. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Women are not drawn to men who need them to feel whole. They are drawn to men who are already whole. Neediness signals incompletion. Completion signals choice. Choice is magnetic. When you subtly communicate through action, not words, that your life is structured, purposeful, and full without her, something powerful happens. She does not feel like your only option. She feels like your selective option. And that distinction changes everything. Evolutionary psychology explains this brutally clearly. Across millennia, selecting a mate was not about excitement alone. It was about resource stability, emotional predictability, and social positioning. A man who wavers under social pressure signals risk. A man who remains self-possessed signals survival advantage. The nervous system is ancient. It still scans for those cues. This is why emotional spikes, jealousy, insecurity, over-pursuit are so destructive. They communicate volatility. Volatility is exhausting. Calm dominance, on the other hand, feels rare. When you respond slowly instead of instantly, when you listen fully instead of interrupting, when you leave first instead of lingering past the peak, you begin shaping perception. You become the man who is hard to read, not because you are playing games, but because you're not broadcasting every internal impulse. Mystery is not secrecy, it is emotional containment. Containment creates intrigue. Intrigue feeds imagination, and imagination multiplies attraction. Now consider this. Most men reveal their entire emotional hand within the first few interactions. They confess high interest too early. They overcompliment, they overtext, they collapse suspense. But suspense is not manipulation, it is oxygen. Without space, desire suffocates. There is also the law of diminishing exposure. The more constantly available you are, the less mentally stimulating you become. Scarcity increases perceived value, not as a tactic, but as a psychological response pattern. If she knows she can reach you anytime, receive validation anytime, and predict your response anytime, her mind loops back to you. Uncertainty reactivates reward pathways. And here is the final layer. You must be willing to lose her, not theatrically, not as a bluff, genuinely. If alignment fades, you walk.
If respect diminishes, you disengage. If energy feels one-sided, you recalibrate or exit. Why? Because self-respect is the core of masculine gravity. Without it, everything collapses. Seneca warned that attachment to what is not in our control enslaves us. When you attach desperately to outcome, you surrender leverage. When you remain grounded in your standards, outcome becomes secondary. And paradoxically, that's when attraction often strengthens. Because now she senses you are not orbiting her. You are standing in your own center. Let me ask you something directly. If she withdrew tomorrow, would your purpose remain intact? If the answer is uncertain, that's where your work lies. Women are drawn to men whose lives have gravity independent of them. Purpose is magnetic. Discipline is magnetic. Self-command is magnetic. Not in a loud, boastful way, in a quiet, unshakable way. You don't need to advertise value. You embody it. And embodiment cannot be faked over time. Eventually, cracks show. So build the foundation. Control your reactions. Refine your standards. Move with deliberate pacing. Let silence breathe. Allow tension to build without rushing relief. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to create attraction. You become the man attraction organizes itself around. She leans in first. She invests more. She seeks clarity from you. And even when she can't articulate why she feels drawn to you, she feels it. Because beneath all surface-level signals, her nervous system has made a decision. He is stable. He is disciplined. He is not easily moved. And in a world full of emotional volatility and endless noise, that's rare. Rare men don't chase intensity. They contain it. They don't rush moments. They shape them. They don't beg for validation. They operate from inner authority. This is philosophical seduction through self-mastery, not tricks, not lines, not performance, presence. And once you cultivate that presence, you'll notice something subtle but powerful. You no longer obsess over whether she is attracted. You observe whether she is aligned. That shift alone elevates you beyond ordinary men, because the highest position in any interaction is not the one who is desired, it's the one who chooses. Become that man.